Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Daniel Derryberry, and if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button below. That lets me know that the content that I'm pushing out is the type of stuff that y'all like to watch. And also, while you're down there, check out the description for my affiliate codes, Morphogen Nutrition and Sage Bio Labs. Morphogen Nutrition is everything bodybuilding supplement related, and Sage Bio Labs is everything blood work related. They have their own pre-built lab panels, male and female, and they have even integrated their own AI that will help with interpreting your own lab results so that you can make better informed decisions on your own with managing your health. And with that, all that being said, I hope you guys enjoy this video. So if y'all been following me on Instagram, y'all have kept up with me for the last few months. I just got done with prep for Tennessee State and also NPC North Americans, which is a national show. I have coached myself. I say coached myself since I was 13 years old, but in reality, coaching myself for a bodybuilding show, I've coached myself since I was 19. I did that first show on my own, and there were a lot of mistakes made. I did not come in conditioned, and very common that you don't come in conditioned on your first show, especially if you're doing it on your own, and if you've never been that lean before. And to be quite honest, not to make excuses for myself, but it was a very difficult time to manage the stressors in my life. The one thing I tell people whenever they come to me and they're talking about, oh, I might do a prep, etc., I always tell them you have to mentally be prepared for prep. Like if you're in the middle of a divorce, if you have a very turbulent relationship with your partner, your children, your family members, whatever it may be, your work life, it is probably not a good idea to try to enter into a prep. And the reason I tell you that is because it takes every ounce of emotional energy out of you. Um, it's not for the faint of heart. To put it as simply as possible, it is not for the faint of heart. You've got to have a very strong will, because the moment that you lose that will, that desire, you're gonna slip up and you're gonna go off plan. You're gonna eat like shit. You're gonna skip your cardio. You're gonna stop checking off the boxes. So that's just kind of step one, and something that I realized when doing preps on my own, especially doing my first one on my own. I was 19 years old. I didn't really have like an idea of how long it would take me to prep. I ended up dieting way too hard out the gate, and by the time I was 6 weeks out, I had dug myself into such a huge fatigue hole that I could not manage the hunger symptoms any longer. And being not so wise at the time and not knowing how to manage these newfound issues, I ended up going through my phase of binge eating. So I would binge eat and then I would restrict, and then I would binge eat and then I would restrict. So you talk about taking a good shape and actually making it worse. I was in better shape at 6 weeks out than I was on show day. And that is solely because I dieted to a point where I could not handle being that low in body fat any longer, and I just didn't know how to manage it. And I ended up eating like an idiot the last few weeks of prep. So take it with a grain of salt. But if you're intending on doing a bodybuilding prep, this is why I'm also have taken it upon myself to not only hire a coach, but I'm going out of my way to coach others at an affordable price, because I realize not everybody has $400+ per month to ship out to a coach. So my coaching is about half that price. It's around $200 a month if you do a month-to-month plan with no commitment, of course. But I typically advise people, like, if you're going to hire a coach, you need to work with them for at least a minimum of 3 to 6 months. And the reason I say that, really 6 months, the reason I say that is that coach has to learn your body, has to learn how you respond to food, has to develop a relationship with you to understand what kind of person you are, whether you're an emotional eater or, maybe you're just robotic and you can do everything, 100% balls to the wall constantly. There's just a lot of parameters that need to be understood about this coaching client relationship that I don't think a lot of clients understand they're getting themselves into when hiring a coach. It's not just as simple as writing out a workout program and writing out a diet program and saying, here you go, do that. That's why we are supposed to have weekly check-ins. That's why you need to be tracking your weight daily. And I will kind of just speak on my own client coach experience so far. Not me being the client, me being the coach. Currently, I've come to realize that when you don't charge a lot for your coaching, you typically will get individuals who do not take the coaching very seriously. And it's not to say that they don't take the coaching very seriously in a sense of like, We don't all have goals to become Mr. Olympia, right? We don't all have goals to become pro in bodybuilding. Maybe it's just a tier off or a check off your bucket list. You wanna step on stage and challenge yourself. You want to get in the best shape that you've possibly been in your entire life. Um, Not everybody has the same ambition, and so I can 100% understand that. But whenever you come to a coach and hire them, and they give you their expectations on how you need to apply yourself as a client, and you don't even meet the bare minimum, you're no longer a good client. So you're paying me, and I almost don't even want to take your money because you're not even following what I'm trying to advise you on. And so, in my own personal experience, I've already kind of experienced that with the lower priced packages. Whenever you get hired by somebody who's paying the lower tier package, I want to give my 100% all to you as your coach. But if you don't return it, I can do everything in my power to write out a book to you, and I can tell you what I think that you need to be doing. And but if you're not communicating with me, and you're not filling out your check-ins weekly, and you're not tracking your weight, and you're not tracking your water, and it it's hard to it's hard to give you the results that you're looking for, right? And so now that I've become affiliated with Team Limitless, with Cody Neary, who owns Team Limitless. He's provided me kind of an opportunity to get my name out there and to represent a business that's already established and already has reputable clients, right? Clients that are actually making results because the coaches that are representing Team Limitless actually know what they're talking about, and the clients that are paying for these coaches actually want the results and are actually committed to the plan. And so trying to find people like that is difficult at the moment, but I'm not losing motivation, or rather, you know, I'm not, demotivated by the fact that I haven't found a couple clients like that yet. But that's why I'm going to continue to try to push out content, maybe here on YouTube, on Instagram, kind of dabbling with TikTok at the moment, but TikTok's really not my thing. I realize that that's like my biggest downfall is um, I want to be in the space of bodybuilding, but I realize I don't want to be your typical influencer, if you will. Like I want to help people and I want to educate people, but I'm not going to be doing comedic content that makes you laugh. It's going to be like, hey, I'm here to inform, I'm here to teach. Um, and really it's because I wish I had somebody when I was younger and I was learning about this. I wish I had somebody who was just very transparent and just put out information that you could learn from, not just this gobbledygook and bro science and the trust me bro source. That's my source. Trust me bro, it's going to work. If you run 500 milligrams of test and X, Y, and Z, yeah, you're going to make hella gains. Like it's just stuff like that it wasn't easily available to find proper or accurate information when I was younger. And so now where we're almost in the opposite realm of where we're hyper transparent, we're like, oh, here's what I'm taking, and here's what I took in order to get X physique, right? I understand the transparency that's involved there, but it ends up being a double-edged sword with the fact that it starts to advocate the wrong things. We're no longer advocating for the basics of train hard, get your sleep, drink plenty of water, do your cardio, train fucking hard. Those basic things alone, no amount of drugs is going to change you if you don't already have those checked off. So when people come to me and they talk to me about, I want to get into bodybuilding or I want to start taking steroids, have you already checked off all those other boxes? Because I'm telling you right now, you're shooting yourself in the foot if you just hop on a cycle. And if you're already talking about cycling, you've already lost the plot, because you seem to have it in your head that you're going to go and run exogenous hormone. You're going to shut down your natural production. You're going to make a bunch of gains while you're on cycle, and then you're going to come off and everything's going to be shut down. You're going to feel like shit. You're going to go through a depressive phase. It's going to suck. And it's very likely that if you're talking about cycling, you might commit to the diet plan and the training while you're on cycle, but the moment you get off cycle, all that motivation is going to go out the window, and you're not going to do the necessary things to try to maintain all the tissue that you put on. Or I say all, a high percentage of the tissue that you put on while you're on cycle. Um, if you're talking about cycling, I can already tell that you have a short commitment to the sport. When you consider taking exogenous hormones and you're considering doing this sport, you might as well be prepared to do what is now called blast and cruise. Blasting for a period of time, so cycling, taking a high amount, and then coming down and running like a maintenance health phase, maybe TRT. Because at this point, you are shutting down your natural production. There's just no stopping it. Maybe you're one of those genetic freaks who can hop off and everything come back to normal. I don't even, I say that with a grain of salt because I know I've heard a lot of bodybuilders in the past talk about how they ran drugs 9 months out of the year and then they'd come off for 3 months. But if you really look into that, that just doesn't really make sense. Maybe if they use HCG or HMG to re-inhibit production by stimulating luteinizing hormone and maybe getting your testosterone production back. But I'm telling you right now, this idea of cycling off, these guys, whenever they say cycling off, they're really talking about going down to 500 milligrams of test to maintain their size. Because if you're 260 pounds pure muscle, you're not maintaining your muscle on no testosterone at all. You're going to be running 400 milligrams of test with a bunch of growth hormone. I say a little bit of growth hormone. And without the growth hormone, you're definitely not going to hold on to tissue running 200 milligrams of testosterone a week. It's just not happening. So, I guess to get that out of the way, what I'm trying to say is if you're serious about getting into the sport of bodybuilding and you're serious about getting on stage, you really need to talk to yourself about this. You need to have like a sit down, look in the mirror, write it down on your notes app and say, what are the reasons I'm getting into the sport? And what are the consequences I'm willing to accept? Because if you're not willing to accept all the consequences, you don't need to be doing this sport. You don't need to be. You don't even need to be considering taking steroids, unless, and I say steroids because that's the term that's thrown around. Even testosterone. If you're looking at TRT, you need to get some blood work, and you need to have more than one blood work panel that shows that your testosterone levels are low. If they're low, then maybe you can consider HRT just to give you a little bit more drive in the gym and a little bit better recovery in the gym, more energy, better sex drive, just overall better mood, right? So that's one thing to consider. But if you're not actually looking at bodybuilding, doing the whole competing, or powerlifting, whatever it may be, you have no business touching steroids because you're going to love it while you're on them. And then the moment that you come off, everything's going to fall apart and you're going to lose all interest in the gym. And I hate to see that happen to people. But once again, it's the risk assessment. Are you willing to take that risk? Right. And so I did 10 years, almost 10 years of natural bodybuilding, natural training, if you will. And I was already, I'm not trying to flaunt numbers here. And I really don't even want to put numbers out there because it's besides the point. What I will say is for my age, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, I was very strong. I was pretty well developed. I wasn't like, Keon Pearson or Ronnie Coleman size, being natural, but I was relative for my size, my structure. I was really strong. I was really well developed for being natural. And so I already noticed I had a propensity to, putting on muscle. But I committed to years and years and years of training before I ever decided to hop on PEDs. And even if I could go back in time now, I probably would have waited just a little bit longer because I did start relatively early, being 19 years old at the time. Do I advocate for that? No. I would be a hypocrite to say don't take steroids. But what I will say is I don't advocate for it because most guys that are 19 years old have not committed to training for 8 years, right? And so yeah, I was training for about 8 years at that point. And I knew since the day I had discovered bodybuilding, I was like, yeah, performance enhancements are going to have to be a thing eventually. And I think if I would have waited until I was maybe 20, 21 years old, I probably would have been more content with that. But I did start pretty early. So I will go ahead and give myself my own self-critique. I should have started later. And even that is considered young. But like I said, I've been doing this for so long. Most guys don't even think I'm my age, regardless of me having a shaved head now, which is purely out of my own choice. Because my hair started to thin, I was like, you know what? It's thinning, shaving it off, whatever. That's the only side effect that I've truly acquired, superficially speaking, because there's obviously mental side effects as well. But gyno, acne, hair loss is my thing. It happens. Um, those are the things you have to consider. So to not go on an even bigger tangent beyond that, um, if you are into bodybuilding and you're serious about it, I would highly, highly suggest you find a bodybuilding coach. I used to be under the impression that I was just paying somebody to tell me what to do. And in essence, that is essentially what they're doing. You're paying them to tell you what to do. The importance in all of this, though, is it's greater than the tip of the iceberg. When you hear the term accountability when hiring a coach, you think, oh, they're going to tell me to stick to my diet. They're going to tell me to train. When you have somebody that's in your corner, whether you're paying for them or you have somebody that's just supporting you for free, when you have somebody in your corner that's watching your every move week by week, they're coming and checking in with you saying, hey, what's going on with your weight this week? Hey, have you been sticking to the diet plan this week? What's going on with training? Why is training taking a dip? Why is your When you start to have somebody on the outside able to ask you those questions and you're able to reply to them and give you feedback, you'll find that there's a lot of stuff that you don't self-examine too much, or that you get caught up in the process of the daily grind, right? And so for me, for example, having coached myself, there were times during preps where I didn't know when to let off the gas pedal. And what I mean by that, metaphorically speaking, is when do I need to diet harder and when do I need to give my body a break because I am dieting. I've been dieting for 3 months straight and I haven't given my body a break to even create any kind of metabolic adaptation that spikes the metabolism back up and maybe holds on to more muscle tissue. When you don't have somebody in your corner to watch you week by week and to see the trend, and you don't track that trend efficiently week by week, usually the wheels will start to fall off. And so that's where I've found myself multiple times now. Eventually the wheels fall off because I didn't have somebody in my corner to watch me step by step of the way, And the hardest part, especially being in a prep, for example, is the mental exhaustion that comes near the end. When you're actually truly stage lean, you have no energy left to think about, well, do I need to diet harder or do I need to give myself a break? At that point, you're going off of sheer willpower alone and discipline and telling yourself, I've just got to keep training hard and keep just dieting really hard. And you just don't know when to give yourself a break. And so to have somebody in your corner who can watch the trend and to be unbiased in their decisions for you, to tell you what to do, you'll find how beneficial that can be and how less difficult preps can be when you have somebody in your corner like that. And so that's why I've turned full cheek and I've had to accept to myself that while it's possible to coach yourself, it's definitely not ideal. There's a select few of individuals you can find in the professional league of bodybuilding. John Jewett is just a trademark name at this point. Like, he is so well known. Everybody knows who John Jewett is. He coaches himself. But John has deep emotional detachment from his own physique. And so he can literally treat himself like a client through the screen he's looking at on his computer, and he can make decisions for himself without having any emotional, distraction. And also, he's living the bodybuilding lifestyle. He doesn't have, aside from his own business ventures with what he's doing, he's got no actual stressors in his outside life that are unpredictable. Like for me, for example, I work industrial maintenance. I don't know what I'm coming into every single day at work. So some days are harder than others. And so some days of prep were harder than others. So that's just something you have to consider whenever you don't have somebody in your corner to try to support you in those hard days. So anyway, I think I kind of got that. I got what I wanted to say out about that. This is not just like my way of saying, hire me as a coach. I'm genuinely saying, whether you hire me as a coach or you find somebody else as a coach, I definitely think that it can help a lot when it comes to managing a prep, and not just a prep. Here's another one for you. When guys get into bodybuilding, they think that they can just blast. I say blast. Let me use the correct literature. Take a large amount of steroids for very, very long durations of time. And I will admit, because I was one of them, oh, I'm young and I don't do anything else recreational. I don't drink alcohol. I don't do drugs. So therefore, I'm like the epitome of health for my age. Therefore, I can blast steroids for infinite amounts of time, right? Infinite amounts of time. And so you might think short term that that is okay, but when you time skip 3 years down the road, you're gonna see where that becomes a problem. 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, that is going to be a problem. And what you're gonna find out is there's only so much productivity you can have during these blast phases. So let's just put an example: 16-week off season, 20-week off season. I'm gonna run X amount of steroids or X amount of PEDs for this amount of time, and then I'm gonna titrate, and then I'm gonna titrate, and then I'm gonna titrate. And by the time you're at your peak dosage by week 20, what are you gonna do from there? Are you gonna keep increasing, or are you just gonna hold there? Because at some point, the wheels are gonna fall off. Health markers are gonna become skewed. You're not gonna be able to put down any more food, and even if you are able to put down more food, you're probably going to be too high in body fat to really even put on any more muscle. So at that point, you're just getting fat and you're taking more steroids and you're worsening your health markers. And so at what point do you say, okay, this is enough? When you don't have a coach, I've been here, you don't know when to stop. And I'm not even sitting here saying I've taken loads of amounts, right? Because honestly, my blood work comes back great right now. So I'm very fortunate I caught that and I matured enough to say when enough is enough sooner than most people. I meet guys that are 10 years older than me though that have been doing this shit for as long as for as long as I don't know, 15, 20 years or whatever. And they've never, cruised. They've never gone into a health phase. They just think that they can just run a shitload of steroids year round and keep making results. But in reality, at some point your body is going to hit its limit, and that's whenever you have to know when to take a break. And so having a coach in your corner to say, hey, I've been tracking you for 20 weeks now, this is as much productivity you can have within this off season. Let's dial you back and get you healthy again, because once you're healthy and we've gotten some of the body fat off of you, then you can go back on and you can make way more progress than you would have if you had just stayed on and kept worsening your lipids and all your health markers, right? So there's a smart and a stupid way of approaching things when it comes to how we do this sport. And we have, in the last 20 years, or maybe even longer, have gotten so much more intelligent with how we do things. It's not to say that there weren't smart bodybuilders in the 90s, in the 80s, but most of them had no clue what they were doing. And so most of them were going off of just what some other guy told them that they were doing. And so it was all bro science. And it only became, I think the time that it probably became prevalent, that health started to become more of a priority, well, first was when bodybuilders started to die. And in reality, a lot of bodybuilders die because of the diuretic usage during competitions. Um, Bodybuilders who die of heart failure, those are the ones that probably were not tracking their blood pressure. Those are the ones that probably weren't doing their cardio. Those are the ones that were probably eating high saturated fat diets. Those were the ones that probably weren't taking the health supplements in order to promote circulation within the body. You have to understand that on the outside looking in, you'll have a lot of individuals that will critique you for the idea of, you take steroids? That's unhealthy. It is unhealthy, just like a lot of other things. But if you're not drinking alcohol and you're not eating fast food constantly and you're actually doing your cardio like you should be and you're drinking plenty of water, is it really as bad as people? No, it's not. And the reason that we can prove that is if you look at lab work now. You get, and don't even get me started. I'm not going to sit here and say that lab work is the end all be all. That is not. Blood work, blood markers are not going to say, oh, you're perfect, you're healthy. There's still more involved there. EKGs, cardiograms, getting a calcium score. There's more to that than just what your blood says about you, right? Like, your organs can grow, your heart can grow. Now you might think your heart's a muscle, therefore, oh yeah, it should grow. No, at some point when your heart grows so much, it actually becomes more restricted with its ability to essentially pump blood. And so that's how bodybuilders die from heart failure. A lot of them, left ventricular hypertrophy is like the most common theme when it comes to bodybuilders dying from heart failure. And what does that come from? Not monitoring those things, not doing those prophylactic approaches of maintaining heart health. And so, yes, bodybuilding can absolutely be unhealthy. But if you want to sit here and compare it to the average American who's eating fast food 5 times a week, I'd rather be the bodybuilder on steroids. That's just me. That's just me. I don't want to die from diabetes. I don't want to have heart disease. I don't want to have to take all these different pills to manage all my symptoms for all my problems that I have. And that might sound hypocritical because we do take health supplements to be prophylactic with avoiding health detriment from steroids. But what I am saying is that let's not play devil's advocate here and say, well, oh, you're bad because you're taking it's such a taboo to what's the right word I'm trying to say? The term steroid has a lot of around it, right? Like it has this just when people hear the word steroids, they just think of the worst case scenario. When in reality, you'd be surprised how many people are taking steroids and are much healthier than the average American, specifically. So yeah, that's probably a little bit of spitballing there. I'm trying not to get too wound up and talking too much about specific things, but I feel like I need to kind of like clarify a lot of that, because when you hear the term 23-year-old and you hear the guy say I'm taking steroids and you hear I know what I'm doing, you probably think, oh, he's gullible and he's ignorant and he probably doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to advise you on how to take care of your health. At least I'm not going to sit here and say that, I can write you prescriptions to take, that you need to take in order to, manage your health. But what I will tell you, and what I've come to realize with the healthcare system in America specifically, is they are not here to keep you healthy. They are here to help you manage your symptoms. They are going to write you a script to manage your health problems. They're not going to write you a script to manage your health to actually fix your health problems. And not all health problems can be fixed with a pill. But one thing that I will tell you that bodybuilders utilize that can not necessarily be fixed with a pill, but is a very good prophylactic approach that is prescription, is telmisartan. It's a blood pressure medication, angiotensin receptor blocker. And the way that it works is it regulates your aldosterone hormone levels, which is essentially the hormone that tells your body to retain sodium, and in turn retain water. And so if your blood pressure is trending high and you're very water retentive, then telmisartan can help with managing that and lowering your blood pressure. And the way I see it, I would rather use telmisartan prophylactically to keep my blood pressure in optimal range so that my heart's not going to fucking struggle to pump blood and not going to cause damage to other organs downstream. Because you have to understand that too about blood pressure. It's not just about your heart health. It's about that pressure chronically on other organs like your kidney and your liver. Kidneys can take a lot of damage from having unregulated blood pressure. And so while the doctor can be beneficial if you go in well informed and you are aware that there are certain medications that they can prescribe that might help you, I definitely don't advise to go in there and just ask for a freaking laundry list of pills to take to manage all your problems. Because a lot of your problems could probably be managed through exercise and water and eating a clean diet, a cleaner diet, moderation. Same thing with steroids, moderation. You don't blast year round. You have periods of time where you take a break. Maybe don't come off completely, but maybe just TRT. And as a female, that's an entirely different story. So I'm not even going to get into that. This is more male focused. But that is the common scenario I find with a lot of individuals is they have these perceptions. When you're getting into bodybuilding, you hear all these buzzwords, steroids, PEDs, whatever. And so then you think, oh, there's no way I would get into that. But in reality, it's not as scary as you think. And whenever you actually are well informed, it's very easily manageable. And so once again, this video, I'm not trying to sit here and convert people into thinking that they need to take steroids. But what I'm saying is if you're planning on getting into bodybuilding, hiring a coach is very effective. Having a coach that you can trust is very effective. But understand that if you're going to be competitive in the sport of bodybuilding, it's very likely you're going to have to accept the idea of using performance enhancements. Yes, there are natural federations that are drug tested. Now they're only drug tested if you win. That's the weird thing, because it saves them money, right? But if you win the show, you're then drug tested because they want to verify that they didn't just give the trophy to a person who's on steroids. Problem with the natural federation is that, just like with the Olympics, they can't test for every single drug under the sun. They can't test for every performance enhancement under the sun. Get that through your head and realize it's very likely there are people within your sport, if it's drug tested for performance enhancements, that are taking some kind of PED with either a low detection rate or a very, very short half-life that they can get out of their system weeks before the show or the competition, if you will. And so you're playing on an uneven playing field still. And now I'm not discrediting. There are definitely some natural athletes out there that are very, very hard workers, and they're very genetically gifted, and they have every right to be proud of their accomplishments, especially doing it drug tested. But what I am going to tell you is there are a lot of individuals who want to try to get away. That's like the worst form of cheating to me. You know, people call using steroids cheating. I think it's cheating if you're using it in a sport that drug tests for them. And you think that you can get away with it, right? That, in my opinion, is cheating. In the sport of bodybuilding, in the NPC and the IFBB, there's no drug testing because it's an even playing field. If you want to take performance enhancements, then do it, right? And so, I guess what I'm trying to say by all that is there is a right and a wrong way to do all things. Whether it be if you drink alcohol, there's a right and a wrong way to drink alcohol. You don't drink alcohol while you're driving behind the wheel, right? You don't drink alcohol until you're shit-faced drunk and you're falling over on the floor, throwing up. You drink it in moderation, and you can get the positive benefits from it, if you want to call it positive, without the outweighing negatives. Same with bodybuilding. You know, you can do this sport, you can use the performance enhancements within the sport as long as you've accepted the risks. But understand that if you're educated and you do the things in moderation, and maybe you have a coach in your corner who knows what they're talking about, you can do it much more safely. Much safer, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, that's kind of, I think I got a lot of what I wanted to say out about bodybuilding specific. Like if you're a first time competitor, or if you're considering doing a prep, if you're considering doing it on your own, I'm going to warn you, the money you're going to save from doing it on your own probably is not worth it. And I will caveat off that and say that if you're doing it on your own and you've already accepted the risk of performance enhancements, what I will tell you is a lot of you guys are probably going to take way too many performance enhancements. And if you actually compare the price of performance enhancements you're probably using that you don't need to be using, you could take that same amount of money and probably put it towards a coach and have a more effective performance enhancement protocol that will provide you better results to show on stage. Because remember, at the end of the day, once you've decided to start prepping, it is no longer about building muscle. It is about muscle retention and cosmetics. And so we are trying to utilize or leverage the most cosmetic and muscle retentive compounds available to us to take it to stage. Whereas in the off season, it's no longer about cosmetics. You know, sure, you want to stay lean in the off season, but I'm not over here worried about if I'm holding a little bit more water because this drug aromatizes to estrogen a little bit more, as long as I'm not getting the negative side effects from the estrogen, right? And so that's some things to consider as well. But yeah, I think that's about all I wanted to kind of touch on for this video, because I don't want it to be too long. I don't want it to be an hour long, but I thought I would kind of self-monologue to myself, if you will. It's going to be completely unedited, unfiltered. You know, I want you guys to see my full transparent self. If y'all want shorter videos where I kind of, you know, make cuts and try to make the information a little bit quicker, a little bit more, you know, easily digestible and less drawn out, then please in the comments let me know if that is more beneficial for you guys. But I want it to be as clear that I'm not trying to like hide anything within the video, like, oh, let me cut this out because I said something the wrong way. Like, this is me raw. Like, this is just me speaking and trying to be as honest as I can about my situation, what I've gone through, my experiences, and what I've learned in my own experiences, and some things that I wish I could go back and redo. You know, my first bodybuilding show, for example. I wish I would have just not competed, actually. I wish I would have taken more time to develop my physique. I wish I would have waited to start performance enhancements. That was another thing. Um, but also understanding that, you need to be financially stable enough to even do this sport. That's the great thing about bodybuilding is if you decide that you want to be a bodybuilder, I know a lot of people seem to think that you're only a bodybuilder once you've competed. And while I can somewhat agree with that, you are a competitive bodybuilder when you get on stage. It doesn't mean that you're not a bodybuilder if you don't compete, though. And I want to try to preface that too is that while I don't advocate for taking performance enhancements purely out of vanity, that would also be hypocritical because at the end of the day, it's still vanity if you're stepping on stage and being judged, right? And so when somebody tells me they want to run a cycle because they want to have a little bit bigger arms, for the gym pump or whatever, I'm like, yeah, but is it really worth it, right? Like you're going to take steroids and shut down your your endogenous hormone production, all for the sake of my biceps look a little bit bigger in the mirror, temporarily. And then you're going to come off and you're going to look like shit and you're never going to want to go back to the gym again until you're back on cycle, right? So what I'm trying to say is understand that is a huge commitment if you decide I'm going to start performance enhancements. And there's no turning back. There really isn't. Even if you do cycle off, it's going to have permanent negative effects on you. No matter how much you want to convince yourself it doesn't, it might be bro science to say this too. Once you come off steroids, your testosterone is never going to be the same as before when you first initially were natural. So please understand that it is not just as simple as I'm going to take these pills or I'm going to stick a needle in my ass for 8 weeks and then I'm going to come off and be good. It's not that simple, I promise. And you will regret it. Because I have too many people coming to me in the gym specifically who will ask me that kind of stuff. And I just think to myself, like, well, first off, I know it's pretty stereotypical. Come ask the big guy in the gym about the steroids and what they should be taking. But generally my first response is, well, first, I don't think you should be. But if you're going to, you should probably do it this way to be safe. Because at the end of the day, I advocate for health first and vanity and the cosmetic effects second. Because I want to live a long life. I want to look good, but I want to live a long life. I don't want to die prematurely because I'm too ignorant to the idea of there's a safer way to do this. And too many people have that mindset. And that's also another reason I don't advocate specifically for young guys to take performance enhancements. And the reason why? Because most of us are too short-sighted to see that there's still 30 plus years of our life. I say 30. I hope to be 80 years old, so 60 plus years of my life to live, right? But nobody at my age is thinking that. They're thinking about right now. They're thinking about the next 5 years. They're not thinking about 60 years down the road if they're still going to be around because of the negative effects that these performance enhancements could have on them because they're doing them improperly. So, with all that being said, I think I got all that I wanted to say out of that. I would like to touch on more topics because I could just talk and talk and talk. But I'm going to go ahead and end this video, and I will try to make another video maybe as like a follow-up to this one. If y'all like this video and y'all can appreciate the information I put out from this, if you have any questions, maybe a loaded question to branch off of this topic, I'd love for y'all to leave that down in the comments or DM me on Instagram because I know a lot of you who are probably watching this came from my Instagram. But with all that being said, my name's Daniel Derryberry. Like I said at the beginning of the video, subscribe if you haven't already. Check out the affiliate links in the description. I would not be advocating or sponsoring them if I did not think that they had good quality product, whether it be Morphogen Nutrition or buying blood work through Sage Bio Labs. And with all that being said, I hope you guys have a good day.